think I'm live. Am I? Yes. I should test this beforehand, really. Hello, good afternoon. It is Thursday, and it is the 12th of May 2020. I'm reading Life in Spirit by Harry Edwards. It was published in 1976, and this is the story of John and Mary, he says. Any John, any Mary, brother and sister, husband and wife, sweethearts, friends, the story of you and me. But with this difference, John and Mary have died and have entered into their new life in spirit. Harry Edwards was known in the world as a spiritual healer and an author of many books, a teacher and a very wise man. There's a picture of him here, which I think is rather lovely, which I often show. So this is Harry Edwards. And I have read the other chapters, and we are now, I don't know whether I'm frozen here, I can't see. We're now at chapter 8. Reception in the spirit realm. Not one of us knows what occurs when the time for our transition into spirit life arrives, and indeed some folks say that life terminates with a last breath. A relative once told me, if it is as you say, then your belief will give you much happiness in contemplation of a further life after this one, and if it is not, what does it matter? It may be that this book could be a contribution to the survival point of view. When I had the thought of writing a book on life in spirit, I had no idea of what to write apart from some general ideas, and these were scanty. I had no plan in mind when I put a sheet of paper in my typewriter, typed out the title, then the word preface, and this is the one as printed in this book. Next it was chapter 1, and as the thoughts flowed, so I typed them with the tip of my right-hand index finger. The first time I typed was in a tent by the side of the Tigris at Baghdad 60 years ago, and I had not advanced any more since those days. My typing is still full of errors, and when I revise and check this page before asking my secretary to do it properly, it will look like a battlefield with crossings out and corrections. I did not prepare a list of chapters or subjects. When one chapter was finished, I asked myself, what is the next one? And going to the typewriter, the answer would come. So, whether the contents of this book are purely my imagination, arising from an active computer brain, or whether I'm receiving in my subconscious mind a flow of intuitive thoughts from another source, which is transmitted to my mind and brain to put the thoughts into letters and words, or whether it is a mixture of both, I do not know. I do know that when healing and my consciousness is attuned to the source of healing, I receive intuitively direct thoughts concerned with diagnosis of the patient's complaint, often removed from the site of the trouble. I also receive advice and directives to pass on to patients, especially those unhappy people with upset minds. Indeed, my life's work could not have taken place were it not for the faculty of attunement, in which my thoughts are received by the intelligences in tune with me, and it follows that my mind is likewise able to receive thought directives. So whether the thoughts I have received expressed and those still to come are literally spirit true, or the proceeds of my imagination, or both, who can say? Suffices that the possibility exists that may, to some degree, give a picture of life in the spirit dimension, or at least a partial glimpse of what our future heritage is to be. At least, I hope the book will provide food for some discussion and reading, when it is derisory and amusing to the deep sagacity of an experienced, skeptical, superior mind. As members of the human family are all so different in some respects fundamentally, it is unreasonable to expect that we arrive as a company in great caravanserai to house all souls, or that an aborigine would find his place amongst the settlement of nuclear physicists or Eskimos. It is a natural experience to expect with, say, the average reader of this book that her or his entry into spirit life would follow on much the same lines as happened with John. On arrival, the newcomer would be met by his or her dear ones, who would have had advanced knowledge of the friends or relatives' transition. A common experience is worth recalling which occurs when a person is near to the point of physical death. This is when the sick one becomes conscious of the presence of members of the family who have already made the change. The sick one converses with them, to whom they seem more real than the living ones around the patient. It's likely that in cases like these, the physical body will retain a degree of life, but the patient's spirit self is leaving or has already left. So, in the more general and ordinary way, a newcomer is received by those who care for him, and they have the responsibility of taking care and giving the happy introduction into a more real and lasting existence. It is logical to conclude that when the time comes for the change to be made, the departing person goes over as he is. He does not suddenly become an angel, full of grace and possessing infinite wisdom. He will know no more than he previously did. He will possess his personality, likes and dislikes, the memory of his past experiences, love and ambitions. He will be just himself, except that he has left behind his loved ones, his house, his bank account, and his car. His greatest treasures will be those acts of goodness and kindness his conscience asked him to render. On the reverse side will be his knowledge of the harm and hurt he has willfully committed, for which he will need to cleanse his conscience through retribution. If it is true that the eternal fight of good and evil goes on and on, it follows that as healing is on the side of God and goodness, it is reasonable to anticipate that preparations are made to meet all eventualities and to cope with whatever problem we present the spirit people with. It is easy to see when an elderly person who has suffered much from a lingering disease and whose outlook has become dulled and weak will need to be revived or received into arms of loving kindness, placed within the quietness of rest, helping the mind to slowly accept the new order of things, to help him become conscious of new strength, to stand and move about, to communicate with those who are looking after him, probably a loved one whom he knows, and so gently becomes restored in strength of body and outlook, enabling him to appreciate, if slowly, the virtues of spirit life. In our time this may take a while, but in spirit life it can take all time or no time. Where clocks do not exist, nor where there is light and darkness, nor season of the year, those are those in our life possessing abundant health who, by an accident or air crash or motor car collision or any other form of violent death, find themselves suddenly transported from this life to the next. One can have the mental picture of ensuing complications, but some general conclusions can be established. It may well be that though the nature of the passing was violent, this need not be a painful memory, for the mind has had little time to comprehend it, but there would be the shock of leaving so much behind, particularly so when a husband is cut off from his wife and children, or, in any more materialistic way, business associations, with responsibilities to other people, a lady from her pets that meant so much to her, a man whose life was bound up in fulfilling an ambition or working for a cause. Each entrant would need to have compassionate, patient, and understanding treatment according to his special needs. Some could be in shock through their unhappiness and grief in leaving behind all that is dear to them. They would need to be taken and rested, given sleep, and so led to a gentle realization of what has happened. They would be given news about their dear ones, and as a sense of perspective comes, they might well engage in some form of service and preparation for the time of reunion. More tragic could be those who were driven to suicide. They would not be damned to all eternity as some religions would have us believe. Wrongly so, obviously. They would be treated with special loving care, knowing how mentally ill their tortured minds had suffered from troubles that were so real to them, so fearful, that in panic they ended their earthly lives by their own hand, just as a normal person possesses with his character and memory at the passing, so it may be the unfortunate one, on coming into the new life, could still have the fears and reason for upset, possibly deep grief. A feeling mind will be able to create a picture of the treatment the spirit, doctor, and nurses would give to them, the kind, soothing voice, the giving of love to wipe away the effects of cruelties and indignities, the giving of flowers, granting sleep, restoring their strength and personality and confidence, rebuilding their perspective, and providing them with a new avenue of service, possibly nursing or some other form of rendering help. There are, of course, many more types of special needs. For example, those who are insane, and taking into account the different forms of insanity, obsession, remorse, religious fever, the alcoholic, the drug victim, the essentially hard materialistic mind, the miser, the hypochondriac, down to the person whose character is evil, the sadist, the destroyer, the merciless. In spirit life, all have the right of will choose, a right of free will. They go which way they wish, and no doubt those with evil minds will not be content to remain where love and goodliness reigns, and so they will go their own way. There are, however, other factors which have a direct bearing on how entries are made in the spirit realm. If we believe that life in the spirit realm is orderly, then there must be rules controlling it, and those who form the rules. It is worthwhile to try to form a mental picture of the scale of service and organization that must be applied to the one service of helping newcomers from the human family into spirit life. Perhaps we should avoid the tendency to compare spirit potential to human limitations. The number of humans who are passing into spirit every minute must be very large, and assuming that they are met on arrival and that none are left alone to wander in fear of wonderment, the number of attendants devoted to this purpose must be many more. Assuming that one attendant can only deal with one entrant at a time, the number of attendants must be multiplied by the number of entrants, and the time taken to cope with each one. Added to that number will be the doctors and nurses who need to deal with special cases, some of which I have outlined, and all the facilities for resting and treating the patient and their rehabilitation as they are shown the way towards spirit normality of life. In this we can glimpse how those who wish can give service to others and have the opportunity of doing so. It is probable that there are other avenues of service to God, to spirit, that is not easy for a physically limited mind to perceive. There are the legions of those who render healing guidance and service for the earthly sickened mind, needing good influencing to bring contentment to the outlook. There are the spirit doctors and the numbers behind the scenes who are attending the temple of healing, to equip them with knowledge, to enable them to become a spirit doctor, and so on. The number of people choosing to serve God and must be very large indeed. Behind all those good souls there must be direction from a still higher or more knowledgeable source, but of this possibly we can offer some thoughts a little later on. Based on the promise that on entry into spirit life one is mentally, emotionally and morally the same as previously was, gives rise to the conjecture of probable difficulties facing those who meet and administer the laws governing spirit life. Where there exists enmity and hatred by one section of the community to another, it implies that when a militant Roman Catholic and equally militant Protestant arrive in spirit, they will for some time continue to express hostility to one another. As the numbers of contesting arrivals enter into spirit, it is logical that they will band together, although it should be recalled they have entered into a non-physical dimension. They are not able to harm each other in a physical sense. It may well be that they could be directed into different arenas, and there may be no limitations of these, so that when they are occupied with other matters, the prejudices of the past will simply fade away. It is feasible to believe that there remain divisions of opinions, especially religious ones, without hatred and being tolerant of each other. It is natural that they will wish to continue to practice their respective religions. This aspect will be dealt with more fully later. There are other divisions which may be important in the early stages of spirit life. There are traditional unities and loyalties between peoples of their own race, so it could not be wondered as if they sought communal living in spirit. It can be reasonably assumed that as spirit life proceeds and the potentials of higher development in the arts, wisdom, and the appreciation of life freed from physical limitations, many of the old world philosophies, love of power and possessions, relics of a form of life based on a materialistic code of values, will progressively diminish. Religious prejudices will go. Nationalistic patriotism will change into wholesome love of all life, and of course racial restrictions will disappear. True, it may take a longer time to induce changes when the differences are strongest, as between black, yellow, white, green, orange, gold, pink, blue, but the change will, as spiritual values, replace the older ones. White people prefer on arrival sometimes a white doctor, although in recent times colored doctors and nurses are becoming much more acceptable in a general way. In South Africa there are white and colored spiritual healers, and it has been found that a colored black sick person will invariably prefer a healer to be the same, even when the white healer has had some more experience and knowledge of spirit science. It is therefore natural that when whatever color arrives passes into spirit, he would strangely often prefer himself amongst other of his kind. If he is met by his dear ones, then he will be as much at home as John found himself to be. Well, so this was published in 1976. That was a hot summer, wasn't it? If you remember, I do. Have a good Thursday evening. Bye-bye.